Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to getting informed, hopefully with just enough humor to keep you listening.
Yeah, we try.
So today, we're diving into something pretty huge in the medical world. It almost sounds like sci-fi, honestly. It's the FDA's recent approval of this powerful new HIV prevention drug called Yeztugo.
That's right.
We're going to unpack what makes it potentially so revolutionary, the incredible hope it offers for changing how we prevent HIV. And, maybe crucially, the very real challenges that could decide if it actually gets to the people who need it.
Yeah.
So our mission here is to get into the science, wrestle a bit with the societal side of things, and figure out what this really means for the future of fighting HIV.
It really is a pivotal moment. I mean, if you look back at the history of HIV prevention, which has been long and frankly challenging, this development feels genuinely different. And just so you know, our insights for this deep dive, they're mostly coming from a pretty thorough NBC News article published just recently, June 18th, 2025. So it's a fresh look.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Yeztugo. When I first read about it, I thought, wait, really? The generic name is lenacapavir, and it's from Gilead Sciences. But the thing that just jumped out at me is how you take it. It's an injectable drug, just twice a year.
Twice a year.
Yeah. Imagine 2 shots given by a healthcare worker, and that's your prevention sorted for the year. That just feels like a world away from taking a daily pill.
Oh, absolutely. And the way it works is quite clever, actually. It's the first in a totally new class of drugs, and antiretrovirals, we call them.
Okay.
Basically, it specifically targets and blocks HIV at certain stages, stops it from infecting your immune cells and then, making copies of itself inside them.
Right.
And the long-acting part is really the key. It stays working in your body for months. It's maybe worth noting, too, lenacapavir itself isn't brand new. It got approved back in 2022.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, under the name Sunleca. But that was for treating really tough drug-resistant HIV strains. This new approval is specifically for prevention, which is a huge expansion.
And the results from the trials, they're kind of staggering when you look at them.
They really are.
In the studies with gay and bisexual men and also transgender people, the group that got Yeztugo injections had an 89% lower HIV rate compared to the group taking daily Truvada, which is, one of the standard PAP pills.
Right, the existing gold standard, basically.
Exactly. And if you compare Yeztugo to, an estimate of no PAP at all, the rate was 96% lower.
Yeah.
But maybe even more striking, there was a separate trial with cisgender women in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
And in that group, nobody who got Yeztugo got HIV. 0 infections.
0. That's,
Yeah.
Those numbers are incredibly powerful. And they've definitely created a huge amount of buzz and excitement.
You bet.
You have Mitchell Warren. He's the executive director at AVASI, the advocacy nonprofit. He didn't hold back, called it the single best opportunity in 44 years of HIV prevention.
Wow. 44 years.
Yeah. And then Daniel O'Day, Gilead's CEO, went even further. He suggested this drug could potentially end the HIV epidemic once and for all.
Okay, that's a massive claim.
It's a huge claim, isn't it? For those of us who've been in this field a long time, who remember the early days, well, it carries this immense weight of hope, but, also a reminder of the fight still ahead.
Right. So we have this breakthrough, but to really get why Yeztugo matters so much, we probably need to talk about the PAP we already have, right?
Yeah.
Pre-exposure prophylaxis.
Exactly. The current landscape.
For years, we've had daily pills like Truvada that was approved back in 2012 and Descovy in 2019, both also from Gilead. And when people take them every single day, they work incredibly well. They cut HIV risk by 99% or even more.
Which naturally leads to the question, if the current stuff is so good, why all the fuss about Yeztugo?
Yeah.
And the answer really comes down to one word: adherence. Sticking with it. Think about it, right? How many of us are great at remembering something every single day for years on end, especially for something preventing a future risk when you feel healthy now?
Good point. Very true.
The source article puts it plainly. Inconsistent use diminishes Pre-C's effectiveness. And studies back this up. They found fewer than half of people starting oral Pre-CP are still taking it 6 months later.
Oh, less than half. Wow.
Yeah, and it's not just forgetting. It's the hassle, the daily reminder, the pharmacy trips. It's a burden.
Yeah.
So Yeztugo's twice-yearly shot, it's a direct shot, pardon the pun, at solving that adherence problem.
Right. It just takes away that whole daily mental load.
Completely. And it's even a step up from another injectable pre-UP, Apertude from Vivi Healthcare. That one came out late 2021.
Okay, I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, it's effective, but it's given every 2 months. And apparently it hasn't really taken off. The source said it gained scant traction.
Huh. Why do you think that is? Still too frequent?
Possibly. Maybe for many people, even needing a clinic visit every 2 months is still a barrier, you know? Life gets in the way. Twice a year feels fundamentally different.
Makes sense. And we have seen sort of mixed results with the pills, haven't we? Like Truvada and Descovy have gotten more popular over time, especially with gay and bisexual men.
Definitely.
They account for, what, 7 out of 10 new HIV cases?
Yeah.
And they're the vast majority of pre-IP users currently?
Yes, but that success story has a flip side. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, you see these really stark disparities.
How so?
Well, while pre-IP definitely helped lower HIV rates among white, gay, and bisexual men significantly, the rates among Black and Latino gay and bisexual men, they've stayed stubbornly high, markedly high.
Okay.
And pre-IP use in those communities is just disproportionately low. The data shows Black gay men, for instance, are less likely to stick to the daily pill schedule exactly as prescribed.
So the adherence issue hits harder there.
It seems so. And this is where someone like Dr. Suzanne Doblecki-Lewis weighs in. She's chief of infectious diseases at University of Miami's Med School. She says lenacapavir, Yeztugo, could really help reduce these racial gaps.
Okay, that's helpful.
But, and this is the crucial but, only if it's made available easily and at low or no cost to people who can benefit from it who are uninsured or underinsured. That access piece is everything.
Right. The potential is there, but making it real is another story. So let's talk about those hurdles. What could stop Yeztugo from actually, changing the world?
Well, the elephant in the room is usually the price tag.
Okay, hit me with it.
The list price is $14,109 per injection.
Wow. Per shot. And you need 2 a year.
2 a year. So that works out to $2,352 a month.
Oof. Okay. That immediately raises red flags about who can actually afford that.
Exactly. And it raises serious questions about insurance coverage, right? Insurers, you have to imagine, especially at first, might much prefer covering the generic Truvada pills. Those can cost as little as $30 a month.
$30 versus over $2,000. Yeah, you can see the issue.
Or they might cover Yeztugo but stick patients with really high copays. That's according to Elizabeth Kaplan at Harvard Law School's Health Law and Policy Clinic.
So even if it's covered, it might still be out of reach.
Precisely. And then there's another cloud hanging over this. A pending Supreme Court decision. It involves the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare.
Okay.
Part of the ACA mandates that insurers have to cover certain preventative services, like PEP, at no cost to the patient. No copay, no deductible.
Right. That's been huge for PEP access.
It has. But if the court rules against that mandate or weakens it significantly, that could suddenly introduce costs for all PEP, including Yeztugo, for millions of people, another major barrier potentially dropping into place.
Okay, so economic hurdles are massive. What else?
Well, the source article also points pretty directly at the political climate as a significant worry.
How so?
It mentions recent actions under the Trump administration, specifically sweeping cancellations of research grants and pretty severe cuts to the HIV prevention infrastructure here in the U.S., particularly hitting the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Cuts to the CDC. That sounds counterproductive if you want to end an epidemic.
You'd think so. But these cuts, they're not just abstract numbers. They could have a really damaging impact on the ground. For instance, the administration's budget request for 2026. It proposes a $1.5 billion cut. That's 35% for domestic HIV funding.
25%.
Yes. And that includes potentially shutting down the CDC's entire $794 million HIV prevention division.
Shutting it down.
That's what's proposed. And you have to understand, a lot of the CDC's HIV money goes out as grants to state health departments, local clinics, nonprofits, the people actually doing the work.
Right, the front lines.
Exactly. So severe federal cuts could basically hobble, as the source puts it, their ability to even educate people and doctors about lenacapavir, let alone help people access it.
So the drug exists, but the system to deliver it could be dismantled.
That's the fear. And it goes beyond just delivery. The administration has also pushed to slash funding for the National Institutes of Health, the NIH.
That's our main medical research agency, right?
The primary one, yes. They fund tons of HIV research, including studies on how to best implement POP in the real world. There was even a dossier compiled by a Harvard researcher listing grants that got canceled.
This sounds really serious for future progress.
It is. Now, a federal judge did rule some of those NIH cancellations were arbitrary and capricious and void and illegal, which is something. But the overall direction and the uncertainty about future funding, it casts a long shadow.
Okay, wow. So cost, insurance, politics, any more immediate hurdles, like day one type problems?
Yeah, there's a practical one mentioned. Even though the drug is approved and you could technically ask your doctor for it almost immediately,
Uh-huh.
it might actually take up to 2 months to navigate the system and get that first injection.
2 months. So even if you're ready and eligible, there's a potential waiting period.
Seems so. And that delay, even if it's temporary, could be a critical gap for someone at high risk right now.
It all comes back to that warning from Dr. Doblecki-Lewis, doesn't it?
It really does. Her point was, if you have these barriers, complicated insurance hoops, high copays, instead of helping fix the existing inequalities in PAR-EP use,
You could make them worse.
you could see disparities just get worse. It's a sobering thought. A breakthrough isn't a breakthrough for everyone if the system puts up walls.
Okay, so that's a lot of significant challenges. But presumably, people are trying to push back, right? Efforts are underway to make sure this potential isn't wasted.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely not all doom and gloom. People are mobilizing.
Happening.
Well, Gilead, the manufacturer, seems to be taking steps. They're actively talking to insurers, trying to get coverage sorted out.
Okay, that's good.
They've also pledged to cover up to $7,200 a year in out-of-pocket costs for people with insurance. And for low-income folks without insurance, they have a patient assistance program that's meant to provide the drug for free.
So, programs to tackle the cost barrier directly.
Yes, trying to bridge that affordability gap, which is critical.
And what about getting the shots to people beyond just cost?
That's where we're seeing some really interesting, innovative approaches. Like, there's a telehealth company called Misture. They focus specifically on PPAR-P.
Oh.
They announced plans to offer Yeztugo right away. They have actual storefronts in some big urban gay neighborhoods. And they're also partnering with clinics across the country.
So trying different ways to reach people where they are.
Exactly. And crucially, they plan to offer it even to people without insurance through these partnerships. The CEO, Tristan Schucraft, basically said, "We're ready."
We're ready. I like that attitude. That kind of proactive, can-do spirit feels necessary here.
It really does. And when you look at the bigger HIV stats, you see why this kind of push is so vital.
Lay it on us.
Okay, so in the 10 years after the first pre-AP pills came out, 2012 to 2022, the overall annual HIV transmission rate in the U.S., it only dropped by about 17%.
Only 17%. That seems lower than you might expect with such effective pills available.
It does, right. It underscores the adherence and access issues we talked about. But here's an interesting contrast. Remember the Ending the HIV Epidemic Initiative, the EHE?
Yeah, launched under Trump, focused on hotspot counties.
That's the one. Launched in 2019, got nearly $3 billion in new funding. In those specific targeted areas, they actually saw a faster decline, 21% in estimated HIV transmissions between 2018 and 2022.
So targeted funding and effort can make a bigger difference.
It suggests it can, yeah. But even so, the scale is still a challenge. The CDC thinks maybe 200,000 people were using some form of PrEP each month in 2023.
Okay, but how many could benefit?
Well, estimates suggest about 1.5 million gay and bisexual men alone are considered good candidates for PrEP.
1.5 million. And only 200,000 are using it.
Exactly, just a small fraction.
Wow.
Which brings us back to what the source calls the crucial question.
This is.
Can we actually get lenacapavir routinely to a critical mass of people who wouldn't have stuck with the daily pills while they're still at risk? It's about reaching that huge group that current methods are missing and doing it consistently.
It really boils down to scale and equity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So summing this all up, we have Yeztugo. It feels like this incredibly potent weapon, scientifically speaking, truly transformative potential for preventing HIV, maybe changing lives, reshaping public health.
Absolutely. The science is remarkable.
It's facing these just enormous headwinds, economic barriers, the insurance maze, a potentially difficult political climate, all of which could seriously limit whether that amazing potential actually translates into reality for the people who need it most.
It really forces you, I think, to step back and ask a fundamental question. What's ultimately going to determine if Yeztugo succeeds? Is it going to be the sheer power of the science? Or is it going to be, well, us, our societal will, meaning our political commitment, our economic choices, our collective decision to ensure everyone who needs it can actually get it fairly and easily? history is kind of littered with medical breakthroughs that didn't reach their full potential, not because the science wasn't sound, but because the implementation, the distribution, the equity, that part failed.
That's a powerful thought to end on. It makes you really reflect on this complex interplay. You've got brilliant innovation clashing with the messy realities of public health policy, funding battles, and just resource allocation. How do we ensure the next miracle doesn't get stuck on the shelf?
That might be the question for all of us going forward.